Aaron, than me. I know exactly.
Recording in progress.
Rise as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, to the April 21st, 2025 City Council meeting. We begin every council meeting with an open comment period. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public to speak on items that we will not be taking public testimony during another public hearing later in the agenda. Each person has up to 2 minutes to speak for a total of 20 minutes. I will be keeping track of time through a variety of methods, so please know that I may need to cut you off. We'll have the stoplight here, and then there is the timer in red up there. And I request that each speaker be concise to allow more people to speak during the designated time. Participants are also encouraged to limit comments generally to topics that are within the scope and jurisdiction of the council's ability to affect policy. Council members and staff do not respond to your comments during public comment, but will instead follow up on specific requests separately. If you have materials to share with the council, you may give them to the city clerk and Keisel over there to distribute. And you will be invited up to speak in the order that you signed up. And we at first have, we have no one signed up for public comment period. Is anyone here who didn't sign up wish to speak during public comment? If not, we will move on to our agenda. That's a first for me. I don't know if that happens very often. At this point, I'll ask Clerk Hazel to call the roll.
Good evening. Councilmember Keen,
Here.
Councilmember Miller,
Here.
Councilmember Wall,
Here.
Councilmember Fredericks,
Here.
Councilmember Palmer, Councilmember Doring,
Here.
Council President Schubring,
Here.
Mayor Norton.
Present.
Thank you. Moving on to our city administrator's report. Administrator Zelms, please go ahead.
Thank you, Council President, council members, Mayor Norton, members of the public. We always start this report off by talking through the customer service principles that all of our teammates express each day. Respect, integrity, safety, and excellence is how they do their work. So thanks to all of you here, out wherever you're doing your work, for how you represent the city of Rochester and serve our community. Also wanted to point out a few things that are coming in the community. So we have an opportunity to meet an owl with the International Owl Center coming to the library on Wednesday, April 23rd, 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. I don't know who might be interested in that, but if you are, just made that up right on the spot. But lots of stuff to learn at the library, and this is one of their programs that they're doing in partnership with the Owl Center. So again, that's on April 23rd, this Wednesday, from 4:30 to 5:30. All ages are welcome. You can head over to the public auditorium. Then we also have Sweet Adeline's Region 6 convention coming to Rochester. That is actually a free event that will be at the Mayo Civic Center. It's running for 4 days. The quartet competition from 6 to 9 p.m. on April 25th, and the chorus competition from 12 to 6 p.m. on April 26th. There are opportunities for you to gather. It's women's barbershop quartet, so if that's something that you're interested in, that is open to the public, and you may see folks around town or hear them. Also did want to honor City Council's former and current, as well as our Parks and Recreation Department and Board for the Minnesota Recreation and Park Association Award for Excellence Award for all the work that's continued to happen over decades at Cascade Lake Regional Park. Many of you, many folks in the audience have probably enjoyed that park. It took a lot of planning, and as those phases continue, many people are able to enjoy the park and as it continues to be built out with that master planning. So check out our website, rochestermn.gov, and see what there is to do at Cascade Lake Regional Park. Also, maybe on less of a high note, we did send out some collection notices for folks that were past due collection on their parking tickets. So if you want more information about that, you should go to the city portal, so rochestermn.citationportal.com, or you can call the city at 507-328-2047. If you received something in the mail and you're not sure what it is, please check that out. We did make a change to our process last year, and so those do go to collections when they're 45 days past due, and we did send those on January 1st, 2025. We have a free family day coming up at our partners at Rochester Art Center. So on Sunday, April 27th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., you can check out the Art Center with your family. They are going to be doing fiber arts there. So something to do if you either miss the owl show or this is more your speed. And then finally, we skipped that, have an opportunity forthcoming with our partners at Chateau Historic Theater on Saturday, the 26th, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. There will be Trust the Hours, Mental Health, Art, and Poetry in the Med City. So that is an opportunity for folks to attend. So you can check that out at the Chateau Theater. If you're interested, and that exhibit will be ongoing and open through June 7th, but this will be the exhibit opening on this Saturday. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Administrator Zelms. Mayor Norton, go ahead.
I have a number of things tonight, so I apologize. As I'm sure you're all noting, when spring rolls around, our calendars get quite full and the city starts becoming what we see all summer long, which is a really great place to be with lots of activities. So I've got a couple things. One is this Thursday, I've invited you all in the community to attend a informational session. Virginia Wright Peterson is she's done some research on the woman that was selected for a statue in Central Park downtown. And so the statue will not arrive till the end of the year, but Virginia's done the research and is going to give a quick lecture about that. And it's open to the public. So that is Thursday at the Rochester Country Club, 5 to 7. Also, Arbor Day is coming up on Friday, April 25th from 11 to 1. There's free food and trees and giveaways. It's a great time. We have lots of students that show up for that. And this year it's at a new location, which is Cascade Lake Park. So that should be an opportunity for us as Administrator Zelms just mentioned, an award-winning park. This will be an opportunity for folks to come look at that. I'm excited for the new location. Also, help us plant trees. The annual Our Neighbors Tree Planting event is April 26th at 8:30 a.m. I think they do a couple a year, but this is one of them. So it's always fun to go to that. A lot of youth come, a lot of neighbors come, but it's fun. And I know we've heard youth be very excited when they go back to neighborhoods years later and say, I helped plant that tree. And that's really neat. Good for the environment too. As I mentioned before, each meeting, I'm going to bring up one of the Rochester Visioning feedbacks that we got. This time I focused on arts and culture, and so you each got a handout. Just for a quick overview, the themes that we've pulled out are cultural events and festivals, like diverse cultural festivals, year-round events were called for, support for our local artists, public installations, and funding and grants. Performing arts, a performing arts center, which we've been hearing for many, many, many years, and this one, a community theater, was brought up. Music and concerts, live music venues was heavily requested, and music festivals was requested. I don't think everybody knows how much great music we have downtown yet. So we're going to have to keep publicizing all the music and art that we do, so people realize there's a lot more out there than maybe they're aware of. Art education was one of the topics, art classes, workshops, and school programs. Cultural spaces, again, this is another ask that we've had for years and years, which is for a cultural center. That was mentioned numerous times. Gallery spaces, and then some specific comments and ideas, revitalizing existing venues, collaborations, and public engagement. And then some actual raw data is provided for your review, so you can actually look over the actual comments that folks made. So that's this meeting's announcement. And then the Cambodian New Year is being celebrated in Rochester this Saturday, April 26th. Again, as you see, a lot of overlapping events happening in town, so people are going to have to pick and choose. But at 12:15 p.m., the Cambodian New Year's happening, and we are actually signing a memorandum of understanding, which you all approved earlier this year, to be a sister city with the Providence in Cambodia. And so we will be signing with some of the, I guess, friendship committee members, represented from a friendship committee, and then this will be sent off to Cambodia for them to sign it before it becomes official. But that could take another month or so to get that there and signed and returned to us. But that's exciting. It's the first sister city we've added in a number of years, so very exciting. And maybe I'll just mention, for those of you who may not know, Rochester was the first city in Minnesota to take Cambodian refugees at the time, which is why the ambassador selected our city for this, which was kind of cool. Also, I've been bringing some information forward. Some of you may know that the National League of Cities does these mailings, and so I got one about the police department and what they say are best practices and things we should do. And I sat down with the police chief and talked through those. And so he put together for you, this is the recommendations that National League of Cities identified. And then on the back side of the handout that you have, it lists what we're actually doing. And you will find that the community response model, and we already have community outreach specialists, drug and alcohol response teams, and community action teams. On the group violence intervention, we do violence interruption priority initiatives, police assisted recovery programs, and the Three Rivers Restorative Justice Program. Under hospital-based violence intervention, we have hospital resource officer programs, a collaboration with victim services, investigators trained in forensic, experiential trauma interviewing, and established response for sexual assault victims. And the last area that they recommend is community violence intervention. And we have worked with the CERT team. We have downtown safe zones initiatives, which are in the summer primarily, but also some in the winter, a free gun lock program, youth-centered outreach such as resource officers working with Boulder Options, the police, athletic and activities league, high-risk youth summer camps, and I would also say Safe City Nights. So we do the recommended activities plus, but this is just a quick highlight for you from the police department. Boards and commissions, we do have a two Board of Appeals vacancies. Their terms have expired or they've moved on. And Park Board will have Board 3 and 4 openings coming up by June. So if you know of anyone or just want to get the word out and help us advertise, please share that information. We would really love to have the Park Board in particular is a statutory board. It has a little bit more authority than some of the others, but it's very important we have people who will attend, who are interested in the parks and want to help create the very best park system we can. Board of Appeals is, again, it has statutory requirements, but having people understand the field of construction and zone rules for construction is really helpful, but not mandatory. So just thought I would share that. Move with the Mayor started May 15th. I'm out doing my muscle building again, this time hopefully a little more carefully than last time. Doing that, there's a lot of activities coming up: bike roll to school day, bike to work day, Med City Marathon, Med City Meander. So there's lots of biking, walking activities, as well as activities at the gym, and we want to encourage everyone to stay active. I do this twice a year, and there's a little if anyone wants to participate, a little sheet for you to track your activities. And we want a healthier Rochester. It's good for not just physical health, but also mental health as well. Just a reminder, the Year About Youth, there is on our website, there's a place to find out youth-supported activities in Rochester, and nonprofits and others are sending us the activities for youth, and we're putting them out there on the mayor's webpage. So feel free to go check them out. And lastly, the mayor's newsletter has been going out now. I think it's monthly, could be every other week, but I think it's monthly, with a few tidbits such as ideas like, or issues like I've shared today with you, some of those that are open to the public, and I share those on them. So there's the QR code to sign up for the newsletter, or just let us know at the office. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on to our order of the agenda, are there any changes to the agenda? Staff, council members, is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
Move to approve the order.
Moved by Councilmember Keen,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Wall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nay, say nay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to our consent agenda. I understand Councilmember Palmer has pulled items F9 and F14. Councilmember Wall has pulled item F6. Are there any other pulled items? Seeing none, I would invite a motion to approve in block items F1 through F5, F7 and 8, F10 through F13, and F15 through F24. Moved by Councilmember Fredericks,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Miller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to our public hearings. We have 4 public hearings on our agenda this evening. Before we begin those, I'd like to take a moment to clarify the process for our public hearings. Staff, if applicable, will make a presentation, followed by a applicant or applicant representative, if applicable, will have 10 minutes to discuss the item, and then I will open the public hearing. Members of the public will each have 5 minutes to talk about the item, and we also encourage members of the public to keep comments brief and concise, and also contained to the item before us. I will close the public hearing and invite council members to ask staff and/or the applicant questions, and then we will discuss and invite a motion. So with that, I will move to our first public hearing, which is finalists for appointment to the Ethical Practices Board, and I will begin with City Attorney Spindler Craig.
Thank you, Council President, council members, Mayor Norton. This public hearing is not your typical public hearing. This is not a state statutorily required public hearing. This is a creature of your Rochester Code of Ordinances, specifically 2-16-7. I'll just give you a few reminders on the process and what we're doing here this evening. The Ethical Practices Board is a 7-member board. There are 3 anticipated vacancies, and you see the slate of candidates before you this evening. You are not the appointing authority for the Ethical Practices Board. That is also set by ordinance. The appointing authority consists of 3 individuals: the chair of the Olmsted County Bar Association, the chancellor of UMR, and the president of RCTC. This public hearing process follows typical advertisement from the mayor's office, a brief waiting period, and then really this opportunity for the public to offer comment on the finalists, as well as all of you. You are, again, not voting on any recommendation or making any appointment yourselves. We're essentially creating a record that will be provided to the appointing authority. The appointing authority is set to meet later this week and choose their 3 appointments. That's the process I would just add comment. We usually get the question of what's public and what's not, and why do we see certain things, but what's the point of a public hearing if we don't necessarily have a lot of information? The names of the applicants is public. Most of the other information is not public under state statute. And this really isn't necessarily an opportunity for the public to do a deep dive into somebody's background, but really designed more to if they have any particular familiarity with applicants and want to offer some observations, this is their opportunity. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler Craig. And with that, I will open the public hearing. And the first speaker is Sarah Chang. You do, and you may have to turn the microphone on if you don't see a green light there.
Hit a button. No, next one to, yep.
Yep.
There you go.
I see a green light.
So
Ooh.
please state your name and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, my name is Sarah Chang. I am actually one of the finalists for the Ethical Practices Board. We were invited to come and speak, so I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself, put a face to the name for the public, as well as the council and deciding members, and also kind of expound upon my background in ethical practice, theory, and I think most importantly, the motivation that I have for going for the board. My family and I moved here. I do also want to say English is my second language, and I'm a notorious overspeaker when I'm nervous, so I do have a heavily scribbled script. My family and I moved here to Rochester in 2023 for a very common story. We were hired by Mayo. My husband is an engineer and I am a cardiology social worker. So mostly working with patients who are experiencing complications of cardiovascular disease as well as heart failure, not only meeting their discharge and dispositional needs, but also their psychosocial needs, providing interventional therapy, grief therapy for hospice patients and families, as well as setting up resources. This fall, actually, I'll be an instructor working with clinical social work students in their clinical internships, which is a huge honor and something I'm very excited about. And outside of Mayo, I am also a psychotherapist for adults who do not have access to mental health resources in the typical 8 to 5, 9 to 5 therapy hours in my own sort of personal vendetta against barriers for mental health resource access. And lastly, I promise I'm not actually as busy as I sound. I serve as a trustee on the Rochester Montessori School Board of Trustees, and I also serve on its DEI committee. So I have about 3-4 minutes. I could spend the next 4 minutes discussing how, as a social worker, I am uniquely skilled as an ethicist. I could probably detail how our social work code of ethics aligns with the ethical values outlined in our public ethics ordinance, including upholding our positions for the common good, never acting in self-serving interests, appropriate use of public goods, power dynamics, understanding conflicts of interest and dual relationships, and of course, above all, maintaining integrity and establishing and maintaining justice. I could also talk about how our passion for, well, my passion for ethics started actually in my bachelor's degree. I took several courses in human existentialism, deontological ethics, as well as mathematical logic. That was the worst class I've ever taken. How I volunteered around the continent of Asia in search of my understanding for life and gaining a diverse perspective on morality and ethics in every area that I was blessed to visit. I could also go on about how my social work training and education throughout my time, I became particularly interested in understanding cultural identity and how our backgrounds affect our ethical decision-making matrices, and how I began taking specialized ethics courses and certifications to become a highly skilled ethicist. But really, I think most importantly, I should explain my motivation and my own personal framework through which I see ethical decision-making. In truth, I am scared. As a mother of 3, as a second-generation immigrant, as a woman of color in a mixed-race family who certainly does not belong to the elite 1%, I'm a social worker, I see justice and morality crumbling around us today, not just in the past 4 months, but in the past decade, at least. I see unprecedented behavior on the level of our state and federal governments. I see citizens being kidnapped off of our streets and denied due process, and our politicians calling them criminals. I see the reawakening of long dormant diseases due to politicians using public spheres to dictate personal beliefs. I see our economy hurtling towards another recession, and I just paid $20 for eggs last weekend. Our privacy and rights are being violated, and Americans are in more danger than ever before. Council members, I am so tired of being scared, and I am so tired of being angry in a corner by myself, silent and useless. So I decided it was time to put my years of training to use to support my community. Rochester is undeniably a safer town than most. No governmental body is perfect, but I genuinely feel that Rochester is a safe place to work, live, and raise our children, and I am so grateful and blessed to have established a family and a life here. But that's why I can think of no higher honor than utilizing my skills to keep our public service officials accountable, to keep this wonderful town as wonderful as it is. And I think in this day and age, public officials are more scrutinized than ever before, and they are entrusted with immense power and responsibility. It is the foundation upon which public trust is built, is our code of ethics. I think it's imperative that we maintain our highest standards of conduct, and I can think of nothing more incredible than to be able to serve in this role and capacity. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Jane. Our next speaker is Molly Dennis.
All right, thank you so much. So, well, I brought my phone because I wanted to look up statutes and stuff, but I will leave that there. I have to say, I couldn't agree more, and I think we need more people like Sarah Chang on our councils in our world. So, what I'm speaking of is more about the foundation of transparency. When we look at this agenda item, and I'm going to read it directly from the Rochester City Council website. It says, finalist for appointment of the Ethical Practices Board. The action requested is to solicit input from the public on the finalist for the Ethical Practices Board. Now, I just was listening to the city attorney speak on there's not a lot of information able to be brought forth for the finalists, but how can the public, people sitting in this audience, people sitting at home, solicit input if they don't know these candidates? I know a few of them personally, so I can say, well, thumbs up, but what do I do? Are you asking us to call them up to try to get information from them? Because there's no resume, there's no information given to the public to actually make any kind of informed decision. How can we research these individuals if not to kind of go in depth into their background and try to, and are we gonna, if we get, looking at like, well, is this harassment? Are we calling people up, looking at, Googling them? I mean, we need to have information to actually do the action requested that the city council has asked to solicit input from the public on the finalists. So that foremost, I think is impossible with the limited information that we are given publicly. Then also, I think one of the reasons that people are here to speak on behalf of their candidacy for this position is that there is no interview process. When I served on the city council, I did not know this, but there's no interview process. People who are looking at the applications look at this paper, right? They look on paper and say this person is, but there's no process where they're going to actually see them face to face. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I was not until just recently that, so people have to come here and give their interview to all of you who do not have this decision-making process, plus the public does not have the ability to research and look up after this interview for this public hearing that we say. So I think there's a lot of issues. So attached in the resume, there's no resume that can be attached. There is no, when the application is made, I think maybe, shouldn't the application be made public? So when we look at all these candidates, the 9 candidates here listed, wouldn't that be nice to have the applications for those 9 candidates to be brought forth? So the public, the 1,000, 124,000 residents of Rochester and people to look and say, oh, look at this application process. We can now be engaged and informed people who are going to give our input. So I feel that should be a change made. I have a lot of issues with the scope of the Ethical Practices Board, which I believe I'll get gavelled if I start going into that. But the scope of it is very finite, right? We're looking at conflict of interest. We're looking at bribes. We're looking at, well, how can we know what kind of conflict of interest is being, what kind of connections, financial situations each of these candidates have if we don't know anything about them? So I don't know the connections with these 9 candidates with each of you council members. I don't know these 9 connections with each of these candidates with the city and the staff. I have no idea. So I'm imagining not a lot of other residents also have that background. So I feel we need to, if you're looking at how the very narrow scope the Ethical Practices Board has, and if you aren't familiar with those, I would advise each council member to look at that. I mean, if someone's doing bad behavior, someone's does something illegal, harassing, you can't bring that to the Ethical Practices Board. They will send it to HR, they will send it to the courts, right? The Ethical Practices Board, to my understanding, and having talked to previous members of the Ethical Practices Board, is that the scope is so finite that it's really just financial interest. It's if there's kickbacks, let's say a council member puts their name on their church website, right? That might be a situation where they might get more members. Thus, the church might get more revenue. That might be a kickback, right? So we want to make sure that council members, that people who are on the dais here do not have any
Thank you,
financial
Ms.
benefit.
Dennis. Thank you.
I'm sorry, is this 5 minutes?
Yes.
Is it 5 minutes? Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't get any
Minutes.
heads up. Okay, well, just in closing, I just want to say transparency is trust. And I believe very strongly that we need more transparency in order to make
Thank
an
you.
informed
Thank you.
decision. As
Our
the public.
next speaker is Jim Frost.
I'm Jim Frost, and I know a lot of you, and I hope to know a lot of you a lot more as things progress. And there are lots of committees, so there's lots of people for this one. I may be applying for another one instead, depending on what people decide. But the most important thing about me and about anybody who's involved with ethics is that I have a strong sense of right and wrong. And I act on that sense. That's why you've seen me here before, and you'll probably see me here again. I hope for a long, long time, but that's unsure. I also felt that since I'm probably the oldest candidate, I ought to show you I still have a brain, just in case. I think I do. Some of you may have a different opinion. Okay, let's talk about what is involved and how I fit in. Essentially, my career has been, that's the right finger, it's okay. Just checking. I started out in the Navy. I spent 12 years in the Navy. I went from basic recruit to chief petty officer in that 12 years, and I passed the test for senior chief. But I decided it was time to get out and do engineering. But in my Navy career, I fixed radars. It's a matter of problem solving. I supervised a shop. That's a matter of leadership. I then moved into engineering and started at the bottom. I was lucky enough to work in the early days of cell phones in what eventually migrated to become modern TV. And my last part of my career, I worked for Itron. And if any of you look at your gas or electric meters, they have an Itron radio in them. Some of them still have a radio that I've worked on, but I've been retired for 10 years now. And since I'm retired, I have a little time. I want to do things to make things better. And that's why I've applied for this committee. I also feel that there are 2 people that are coming back. I think they should be given the job as long as they've done a decent job already, because you know what you're going to get. That leaves me and 6 or 7 others. Pick the best one you can find. If you have any questions, I'm available tonight or call me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. This is a public hearing. If anyone else wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. This is a public hearing. Anybody else who wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. At this time, I will close the public hearing and invite questions from my colleagues to staff. Any questions? If no questions, I think we move on to the next item. And our next item is the G2, which is final plat by West 80 Partners, and this will be presented by Community Development's Desmond McGill. Mr.
Thank
McGill,
you.
go ahead.
Thank you, Council President Schubring, Mayor Norton, members of the council, good evening. My name is Desmond. I'm with the Community Development Department. I'll bring you this application tonight. This is an application by West 80 Partners LLC for a final plat to be known as Prairie Ridge. This is for the subdivision of 75 acres of R2 and R3 zone property into 51 single-family residential lots, 250 townhome lots, and 3 parcels for future multifamily development. The 3 multifamily parcels are intended to accommodate approximately 600 apartment units per the approved GDP plan. The southern 45 acres is zoned R2, and it will contain a mixture of single-family homes and townhomes. The major land subdivision preliminary plat was approved in October of 24 with 7 conditions of approval. In July of 24, the council also approved the economic vitality funding for the project in accordance with the home ownership creation program, in which 40 of the homes will be at a price point of $368,000 to $422,000. The balance of the units will be priced from $426,000 to $479,000. Staff is recommending that the council approve this final plat subject to 5 conditions of approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. At this point, I would invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to step forward and identify yourself, and you have 10 minutes to discuss this item.
All right. Good evening, Council President Schubring, Mayor Norton, members of the council. My name's Jeff Brown. I'm with North Rock Real Estate, represent West 80 Partners. We agree to the conditions of the final plat and are here for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, I will open the public hearing. If there is anyone wishing to be heard on this item, please step forward. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite questions from my colleagues to staff or the applicant. We're a very quiet bunch today. No questions. Is there a motion on this item? Councilmember Palmer.
I'll make a motion, excuse me, I'll make a motion to approve final plat number CD 2025-008 plat by West 80 Partners with the 5 conditions.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer, seconded by Councilmember Fredericks. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes. Moving on to item G3, which is final plat by Meyer and Companies. And Mr. McGill, you have this one as well.
Correct. Thank you, Council President Schubring and Mayor Norton, members of council. Good evening again. This is a final plat by Meyer Companies for Cassidy Farms Second. This is the subdivision of 3.3 acres of R1 zone land to 10 residential lots. This site is located 2,500 feet north of the existing terminus of Stonehenge Drive, northeast. Lots in this subdivision range from about 90 feet wide, 80 to 90 feet wide and 115 to 125 feet deep. In May of 24, the council approved the major land subdivision for Cassidy Farms Phase 1. That plat consisted of 53 lots. A final plat has been approved for Phase 1, in December of 2024, which consisted of 43 lots, and this will be the final plat for Phase 1, which consists of the 10 lots for a total of 53. The development review team is recommending approval of Cassidy Farm Second, subject to the 5 conditions of approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. At this point, I would invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to step forward, identify yourself, and you have 10 minutes.
Hello, good evening, Council President, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Adam Plushcourt. I'm with Woodseth, one of the engineers on the job. Desmond did a great job laying it out. I'm mostly just here for questions. One thing I did want to mention is if you have any questions on the, it is over the 50 lots for a single access. That with your approval tonight, we're extending that to 60 lots. And per the GDP in the future, any future construction, it'll tie into another road. So there will be 2 accesses to these 60 lots in the future. But in an interim condition, it'll be 60 lots. So I'll be around for any other questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will open the public hearing. If anyone wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite questions from my colleagues. Seeing no questions, Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve the final plat number CD 2025-010 plat by Meyer Companies with 5 conditions.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Doring. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Moving on to item G4, which is a final plat by Farmland Limited. Mr. McGill.
Yes, thank you, Council President Schubring. This is a final plat by Farmland LLC, known as Hadley Creek Estates Fifth. The applicant is proposing a subdivision of 17.5 acres of R2 zone property into 57 residential lots and 5 outlots. The site is located north of 48th Street on the south side and the west terminus of Hadley Hills Drive on the east side. Currently, only one point of access exists, providing access to approximately 150 dwelling units in the north portion of this development. That access point is at the intersection of Hadley Hill Drive and Hadley Valley Road Northeast on the far east side of the project. This final plat dedicates an additional second access at 48th Street Northeast by extending Hadley Hills Drive northeast to 48th Street Northeast. There are 11 conditions of approval associated with this final plat that must be satisfied prior to community development, facilitating the recordation of this plat. An additional condition requires that site grading may not occur until substantial completion of a temporary bridge for interim construction access is completed. The development review team is recommending approval of the subject final plat, subject to those 12 conditions of approval in your packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. At this point, I will invite the applicant or their representative to step forward and state your name again, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Adam Plushcourt with Woodseth, again, engineer on this job. We've read through all the conditions and we're looking forward to working with city staff to make sure they're all addressed. One thing of note on this one, last council meeting, you all approved on the consent agenda a city owner contract for this project. That was for Hadley Fifth, which we're talking about today, as well as Hadley Sixth. Hadley Sixth was at one time going to be 4 plexes, and at the NIM, that was one of the big concern was the 4 plexes. That's now going to be single family homes, but that's a separate plat from this plat. Just wanted to highlight that. And yeah, the plans are very, very close. Hopefully this week we'll have approval. So
Thank you.
thanks.
At this point, I'll open the public hearing. If anyone wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. Anyone wishing to be heard on this item, please step forward. Step forward and state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tony Fink. We've just moved into Hadley Hills, and we just came to check it out. But question we have, you're talking about outlots and wondering what the outlots are, just because I'm not sure what that terminology is.
All right, thank you. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to be heard on this item, please step forward. Anyone else wishing to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and Mr. McGill, do you have a answer to Mr. Fink's question?
I do in a roundabout way. There is 5 outlots associated with this. I believe it's for future development and for open space, but I'm going to pull up the plat here real quick just to make sure that is the situation.
While you're doing that, Mr. McGill, I'm going to go to Councilmember Palmer for his question.
Yeah, the question I have is, condition number 1 is to meet the parkland dedication obligation. Usually we say they're building a park or we're giving money or something to the park department. Where is for this entire subdivision, the park located? I couldn't find it on the, city website.
Let's see what the. I'm gonna pull the parks memo here real quick. I'm sorry.
You want to phone a friend, Mr. McGill?
Please.
Any other staff? Karen, go ahead. Were you gonna? Also, Mr. McGill, if you can just give us a definition of an outlot as well.
Yeah, an outlot is not for like residential development. It's just usually a lot that is typically larger than a normal sized lot in the development, but usually has some sort of special purpose, either for future development, open space, or maybe some sort of public facility, or something of that nature, or if it's like maybe a clubhouse, things like that. Let's see.
My answer. Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
I do have the question to Parkland, or the answer to the Parkland dedication. It says that they're going to dedicate $41,700, which is one thing, but I don't know if we have any parks in that area. And that goes back to my question.
This area is served by the existing Stonehenge Park to the south and west. So apparently there is a park in that existing development. Shouldn't be too far to the south and west. More accurate.
Could you point that to me?
Sure, sure.
So just to clarify, we are waiting on the outlot answer and direction to where the park is. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it looks like it's right off of there on Coral Court, I believe. It's not identified in my GIS as being such, but there is an open field in that area. Otherwise, I'd have to defer to the Parks Department on where that's specifically located.
Is there someone from Parks here to answer this for us?
If they are, they would only be having joined us remotely. Could I just provide?
Go ahead.
Just some
Administrator
context
Stone.
about
Go ahead.
parkland dedication and when there is an in lieu fee. So the parkland dedication requirements are outlined in the Unified Development Code. Part of that is impact of any development even to existing parks, so the entire parks system. So while there may not be a park that is directly within every single subdivision, the intent of the application of the parkland dedication, when it isn't a park within the actual subdivision, is for that to offset the impact on all parks that folks that are moving into that area may utilize throughout the city. So there is a ratio also in the Unified Development Code that talks about proximity. So if there is a more dense development, you are likely to see less cost related to parkland dedication fee. If there is a less dense development, you would potentially see more. And there is also, I may have just said that in reverse, but there is implication across the entire park system when a park is not being built within a subdivision, as those members will utilize other parks, whether that is the closest proximity or not, and have impact on those parks. So just some context about parkland dedication.
Council President Schubring.
Go ahead.
There is-
Mr. Yetzer,
Just
go
to
ahead.
note, there is a park located at 4090 Stone Point Drive Northeast, which is across the street from 48th Street. So that park is likely located close enough to meet the threshold that Ms. Zelms was just talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Yetzer. Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
Since I've been getting phone calls on this and what you're talking about is a Moore subdivision, which is about a mile away from this subdivision. There's 150 lot or 40 lots existing. We're adding more lots to it. I think if I remember right, there's just north of 48th Street, there's a little green spot there. And I think that's part of the park department. In fact, I know it is.
Okay.
So can we make another condition on this that money gets applied to that park?
I would hesitate making such a condition without comment from Parks, because I don't know exactly how they have divvied up the funds for the parks in this area and where they have earmarked these particular funds to go. So perhaps that is their plan. I don't know specifically, and so I would hesitate to make that condition without some comment from Parks.
Ms. Edens, you had a comment to make?
I just wanted to advise the council that there is a park about 1,000 feet to the west of that, called Stonehenge Park. It's quite large. It has a tot lot in there already. I think it was missing off the GIS layer, but it is there.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, I wanted to ask staff just on this number of units go in before the secondary access has to be there. I heard references to a temporary construction thing, but who has the responsibility for that, and is it contractual, or how is it enforced?
I believe that the developer's responsible for funding it and constructing it. They're working on plans. Outside of that, I would want to defer to the Public Works Department for further details about where that project at currently lies in terms of status.
Yeah, is there anything you could add?
Could you repeat the question? I was researching parks in the community on the aerial photo.
We have about three
Can I
things
answer
going.
it?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can I answer it?
Councilmember Palmer.
We have as condition number 12, the temporary bridge is put in and substantially put in prior to them moving any dirt. And that was approved, so that Public Works can make that decision when it was done, so that they don't have construction equipment going through the other lots.
Thank you for that. What I saw was a construction road, and I didn't see a reference to a city street being built so that you would have fire and other sort of emergency access. I'm just asking my question to make sure. I know I've been told that was, once we got over the threshold number of front doors, that would be part of it. It would be the responsibility of the contractor, but I didn't see it in the conditions. I saw a construction road. So I'm just asking to make sure that there is a part of the conditions here, or part of once we went over the 120 units, that somebody has taken responsibility for that city street to be built.
Yes, so President, Mayor, members of the council, the Widseth team has prepared a bridge plan for a permanent bridge that will be the secondary access. The developer's paying for that bridge. We were actually in a meeting with the MnDOT Bridge Office about 2 weeks ago. They're currently reviewing the plans. They're very close, so very soon those will be approved, and that'll be part of the project as well that will provide that secondary access. And it will become a city street and a city bridge in the future.
I see the Winseth wants to make a comment.
If you want to come to the microphone.
I can just add that the meeting he was referring to is the state aid bridge reviewer. They reviewed our bridge plans. They had a couple comments. We sent it back to them, and they're good with the bridge plans now. Sorry.
I just want to make sure that when I see things like reference to a temporary bridge construction, that this is the standard we're building to as a city street for.
So that's a different thing. That was for construction.
But that's what I want to clarify as we approve this, that is part of it, or I need to be clarified that it's not, then I'll know where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that construction is part of this plat. The construction of the final bridge, like a standard city street approved by the city.
Built by WISET as part of
Right.
this approval of this.
Right, it's all part of the same project.
Okay,
It's different city owner contract for just the bridge, but it's all part, it's included in this plat, yes.
Yeah. let me ask again, Public Works, just to make sure that, I just didn't want us to get done with having all these homes there and then find out we didn't really close on a city street. You feel like this is closed?
Yes, this will provide a connection from the westerly side of this development down to 48th Street to the county road. So brand new bridge, brand new public street, it'll be the secondary access. We wouldn't want to grant any building permits or think about occupancy until the bridge was complete beyond the 120 home threshold. But once that bridge is constructed and open to traffic, at that point,
Okay. Can you put me at ease when I'm reading things that talk about construction, bridge, as opposed to city street? Do you feel like we're covered here? I'm just worried about the situation that there's going to be an unfinished thing here, that there was some confusion and it falls back to the city.
we wouldn't allow any building to occur until that bridge is constructed. So that's,
It's constructed as a city street, or?
yes, that's our safeguard. As far as a temporary bridge, there's no temporary bridge per se that's going to allow future construction of homes. We need it to be that permanent final condition that we've accepted as part of the city owner process, and it's now our public infrastructure.
Okay, and at some point, the city will take ownership when that's done, and is that timeline been discussed already?
It would be when the project's complete. They've already got, taken out a bridge number, which is required through the state as part of our bridge safety inspection program. It'll then go on our list of, compliance reviews for safety, just like the other 80+ bridges in the community.
Okay, good. It sounds like, again, Councilmember Palmer's up on this, that it's covered, but I couldn't see it in the words, so I wanted to just get it on the record that.
One more
Go
thing,
ahead,
Dad. Yeah, so we do have a contract with Icon to build the bridge. That's all in place, and we have our inspections and stuff with Chosen Valley set up. So it's not just a plan sitting on a shelf. It's
Okay.
kind of we got a plan in place for all this summer. Yeah.
And then just ask Public Works again, and this rest of the street connecting to and from the bridge to 48, that's all engineered to city standards?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
I'm going to go back to number 12. This is a temporary bridge during construction, so we don't have construction traffic going down. That's correct.
It is, but it's nearly infeasible to get the DNR to agree to something like that. So the permanent bridge is going to be the solution. They've got all their equipment. They're not going to be leaving the site, so they'll be moving material within the project area. I don't see how a temporary bridge is even feasible just due to the permitting and the different regulations with the waterway.
Well, back when this was the last hearing we had on this, that was the agreement. That's how number 12 came to place. So what you're going to say to me is that we're going to have a permanent bridge and then they're going to bring construction vehicles in to construct the subdivision.
I would not anticipate it occurs that way. That condition wasn't something Public Works recommended.
It's something that the city council made it.
Correct.
Correct. All I'm trying to do is keep construction traffic from going through the existing neighborhood to a point. Is that impossible to do?
Nearly. Unless you make them build the bridge and don't do any of the other work and delay the construction of the subdivision, that's the other option. So I'm just being honest and transparent. I mean, if we're thinking about creating lots and housing, some of the construction traffic is going to have to utilize the neighborhood like any other project in the community. They utilize our public streets.
Councilmember Palmer, do you have a follow-up?
No, but I won't be approving this.
Any further discussion on this item? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to adopt the resolution approving final plat CD 2025 010 plat by, 009 plat by Farmland LLC to be known as Hadley Creek Fifth with 12 conditions for the subdivision of 17.5 acres of land into 57 residential lots and 5 outlots.
Moved by Councilmember Keen,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Doring. Councilmember Keen, you have the floor.
Yeah, again, I've always watched this as a concern that because we knew the expense was there for this road, that I thought it might stop from this future development coming. It sounds like there's been other discussions going separately about how the construction, and this is something that we've watched in other communities too, to try to find a construction road in to keep traffic. But it appears here that because of the physical boundary of the creek or the river, that that's not possible. Has it been studied?
Yeah, it's, I mean, they're very close on receiving just the DNR permit for the permanent bridge construction. The DNR does not want the floodway to be impacted, so even with this bridge, it has to be long enough and wide enough to not impact the floodway along Hadley Creek. So the bridge is, in essence, longer than it maybe would need to be if they were to allow a box culvert, which the DNR will not. So the ability to do an additional temporary impact to the waterway, that's why I say it's nearly infeasible and not very cost effective.
Just on the timing here, would the bridge be like usable before like 30% of the construction's done or 50%? Or is there any timing that way that it's going to be used for a lot of the construction traffic, but not all?
I would defer to the consultant engineer as far as, we don't have the full schedule in front of us.
So so the bridge plans, like I said, are pretty well approved unofficially because we're still working through a few hydraulic models, nothing relating to the bridge. So we anticipate the hydraulic model questions taking a few more weeks. The construction of the bridge, I wasn't super involved with that as much, but I think they said like 8-ish weeks of construction. So, I mean, we're looking fairly far into summer by the time they could utilize that. But I will say, for the aggregate of the road base, that's a lot of the trucking traffic. I would imagine that bridge would hopefully be able to utilize by that, because that's a final stage event. The mass grading operations, we designed this specifically to limit any import of material. So the developer actually owns the lot to the north of that highlighted area in orange, and we're utilizing all of that material. It's all good sand, and bringing all that material, roughly 50,000 yards, down to the south to avoid any import of material through the subdivision. So we have most of the equipment already on site. It's just a matter of pushing dirt around within the site. The only construction traffic will be like delivery of pipe, deliveries of manholes, things like that. So yes, some construction traffic, but not as much as a, typical project.
Good, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
One more comment.
Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
Can I clarify with you? So you're going to build a bridge. You think it's going to be pretty much done, and we're going to have sewer pipe come in. We're not putting curb in before the bridge is in?
Again, it's hard to say with permitting and stuff, but I would imagine that this bridge is in, sometime mid to late summer. And usually curb and gutter is one of the last items, we're talking like September, maybe early October. So again, I don't know for sure these permitting processes, but hopefully that bridge is in by the time they're doing those final things like paving and curb and gutter. That's the ideal situation.
So you're bringing in the gravel for the base.
Yep.
You're bringing in the sewer and water pipe.
Yep.
And then at some point, the bridge is going to be in, and then the curb people will be coming in with the aggregate for the base?
Yeah, so the sewer, all the pipes would be first, right? The water, sanitary, storm, that all comes in first. And then your base gets laid down, and then your curb and gutter, and then your paving. So, I mean, the hope is that by the time you're doing your base course and your curb and gutter, that bridge is usable. Again, that's ideal situation. That's our plan. But regarding how permitting processes work, again, that's the hope. But does that answer?
Yep.
Question? Okay.
Further discussion on this item? Did you have a council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Palmer in as nay. Moving on to our reports and recommendations, we have H1, which is our Rochester City Council appointment to Any Path Home. And Ms. Edens, did you want to kind of kick this off?
Sure thing. Good evening, council members, council president, and mayor. Taryn Edens with the Community Development Department. You heard from me at the last council meeting regarding Any Path Home. As a reminder, this is an initiative of 10 organizations with the goal to impact or end homelessness. At that meeting, you approved to sign on to a charter signifying the city's approval to join this effort. Part of that included participation in an advisory board for high-level oversight of this effort. Thus, the ask before you this evening is to appoint a council member to Any Path Home to represent the city in this effort. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Any questions from council members on this item? Is there a nomination?
I had, based on the last discussion we had, I had made a nomination, but I don't exactly know how we should go about this, if we should have, do you have a process of, because I think there's been a couple of names of interest, or how we should move forward? Is it a motion or is it a discussion first? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, why don't we, is there any discussion? I know there has been interest in this appointment by a couple council members. My understanding is that Councilmember Doring is interested and Councilmember Fredericks may be interested. And so
I nominate Dan Doring for the position.
Second.
we have a nomination. Councilmember Fredericks has nominated Mr. Doring, seconded by Councilmember Keen. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Congratulations, Mr. Doring. Keep us informed. Moving on to item H2, contract award AVI for council chambers AV in implementation. And Mr. Parrish, go ahead.
Mayor, President, members of the council, good evening. I'll be brief here. This was well discussed at the previous meeting. We did solicit and receive a bid for this project, which was provided by AVI, slightly under bid. We were originally estimating about $600,000. It came in at $592,093.97. We're recommending that bid be awarded this evening. Costs would be split between the city and county. I would just note as well that the county, as part of the overall project, will be covering the lighting, redoing here. The lighting is original to the chambers, which is about 30 years old. They'll be redoing the carpet as well as the blinds behind you here. I would just acknowledge a couple things. At the time the council requested us to provide some options, we did include those on page 539 of the packet. We're certainly happy to discuss those with you this evening. We are recommending the project as it was bid, but certainly if you want to entertain or discuss those, we're happy to walk through some of the pros and cons. I'd also note that when you do these projects, you are obligated then to comply with some of the ADA requirements. I'd say about $100,000 of the investment here really is focused on ADA. You have $30,000 for the hearing solution in here. You have an accessible dais, as well as $50,000 allocated for captioning over a 10-year period of time. And so that really sort of solidifies our captioning investment for your meetings going forward. With that, I know we have Jessica Schuler and Jeremiah Bauman, both who have actively engaged in the project, and we're all here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. Questions? I know we discussed this at length previously. No discussion. Is there a motion on this item? Councilmember Wall, you have a question?
So, Mr. Parrish, I am looking at the council chambers AV alternatives. Are you saying that we need to have discussion of those alternatives before a motion is approved?
President, Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Wall, You don't necessarily need to have discussion about them. If you wanted to request more information, we're certainly happy to, do that. If you wanted to implement those, you would just do that by the motion that you make. So if you make a motion to approve, but also, let's just say you wanted to do the projector instead of the LED display, you would just note that in your motion.
Go ahead, Councilmember Wall.
So I appreciate, since the last time we talked about this, that staff has come together and found some thousands of possible savings. I also appreciate the forethought that the staff has put into assembling the money that we can pay for this through the cable franchise fees. Also note through one of the attachments that those fees are precipitously declining. And I know there's a pretty narrow scope by which those fees can be spent on the city. However, I think that we can assume that it won't be long before those fees will be zero, as opposed to 13,000 a quarter or 22 or more than there used to be. So I'm everybody up here knows that I'm very frugal, and just 600,000 just is such a big number for me to approve for audiovisual. It is just such a big number, and I would encourage any, and I really, I just encourage any cost savings since this really is money that is stewarded by the city.
Councilmember Fredericks.
For our 300,000 we're going to be kicking in, I just want to make sure we have a guarantee from the company we're going to get the product that we sign up for. We had an issue with that last time around. I just want to make sure we're going to get what we asked for.
Yeah, Council President and Councilmember Fredericks, I appreciate that. I think we're very encouraged by the collaboration we've seen out of this particular vendor. They've been used extensively locally. Part of the challenge we've had is our previous vendors haven't had local presence. We are aware of the fact that this vendor also services Mayo Clinic, and they always have a number of people in town, and so we feel like responsiveness will be much enhanced with this particular vendor.
Okay. In keeping with both Councilmember Wall and Councilmember Fredericks' comments, can you talk about, I mean, we are, as you've said in the past, the system we have now has been hobbled together and kind of patchwork. When this is all together, what level of state of the art will we be, and is there any lifespan that we should expect quality service for our $600,000?
Yeah, I'm going to invite Jeremiah up just to give you a little bit of a better representation of what that might look like. I know we're on a 10-year agreement for the captioning, and generally speaking, you could likely expect to have some kind of useful life within that range. Of course, technology advances significantly here. A lot of the system that we're seeing here today, has not been updated in a significant period of time. But I'll let him kind of paint a better picture for you for what you're buying.
Yes, so one of those things, just like Mr. Parrish mentioned.
Can you state your name again?
Oh, yes, Jeremiah Bauman. So like Mr. Parrish mentioned, technology moves really fast. As we saw through the pandemic, AV really took a big shift just because of necessity. But everything that we are looking to replace out of here is best practice, state of the art as to right now. Looking to what that future is, it's highly unlikely we're going to see 4K, 8K streaming. I'd mentioned that before. It's just not moving that progressively fast because people don't see that. So this will be one built system with the latest and best technology that AVI has found for us, and using as a standard across other government organizations as well.
Councilmember Miller.
Just a question about the funding sources. What is the status of the county's approval of this project? Have they fully approved, or will they follow us?
Yeah, Council President, Councilmember Miller, when we received the bids, we consulted with the county back and forth, and just want to highlight the fact that the AV portion is not quite 50-50 anymore, given the other work that they're doing. We are contributing, above and beyond, $50,000 as an offset. for the couple $100,000 of additional work that they're taking on with the remodel of the chambers. Also, that's helpful for us because we have access to the PEG funding solution, which is a fairly narrow band of, things we can invest in versus we wouldn't be able to do that for some of the other improvements. So we did confirm this with their staff. They had already put some of this in their CIP, and so they indicated to us that, they consented at the staff level to this, and they had, I think, had the authority within their CIP. So I'm not sure that they'll be taking this to their board.
And then a follow-up on the PEG funding and the declining franchise fee revenue. Do we have a transition plan so that 10 to 15 plus years from now, are we planning reserves for ongoing maintenance upgrades beyond the realistic viable life of cable franchise fees?
I think that's a great question. Honestly, yeah, it is a declining enterprise. If you look in 2020, and I think this is sort of our proxy for viewership for cable too. So you can also think about, the ongoing viability of us broadcasting over cable in terms of the reach. We know even with the existing reach, a fairly small percentage of your current subscribers actually watch over cable, but we also understand that you do hear from that small percentage of folks that are interested in cable. And so, but do know, I mean, we are in 2020, in a typical quarter, we were, collecting 21,000. We're down to, 13 now. And so, that's in just a 4-year period of time. So we can expect that to go down. I mean, obviously we'll continue to reserve that for some investments in the next few years, but generally this is going to be part of your budget conversation moving forward that, we're going to have to think about different strategies, which generally speaking are probably the property tax levy or something in that space. So it'll have to transition off of that. We aren't able to tax internet. We aren't able to tax streaming. We are really only able to tax cable, video cable.
Any further discussion on this? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to authorize a contract with AVI in the amount of $592,093.97 with the additional 10% contingency to be split across the city and the county for the county chambers AV implementation project number J1964.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keen, seconded by Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Keen, any further discussion?
I think this has been a fairly painful one because these are big numbers, but I think the couple things that drive me towards wanting to support this is when you get this chance to do it, you want to do the right thing now so that you're set up well for the future. Councilmember Fredericks asked about those guarantees, and part of this, I wish we were not buying product as a most of like giving requirements and saying, fill these requirements. But I think though that's a bridge too far right now. We can't really write contracts that way. So I feel like I have to be a little bit trusting right now to say this idea that we're all going to be digital. We're going to have local contractors that could, if we do run into things, that's going to be easier to address. And I'm glad to see that we're using these other funding versus but I also want to say this is a responsibility. This isn't a nicety or a thing that it's nice to show it on the cable. This is part of us being available and doing our business in the open. And I think it's important that we make sure we do that as professionally as we can within expense reasons.
Councilmember Doring.
Yeah, I could have read it in the packet and it's just escaping me right now. When's the anticipated project start time? Do we have any idea at this point?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So really with the award and getting through the contract process, we've been in conversation with AVI and we'll get this kicked off, get the city, county, everybody together and be able to move forward. As of right now, we were targeting basically not being in this space for June, July and returning in August. Depending on how shipping turnaround times, things like that, we might be able to start even sooner. So really right away once we get through the contract.
Further discussion, Councilmember Miller.
I'll just add, I appreciate the conversation, Mr. Parrish, about the investment that we're making for members of our community who need accessibility accommodations. I know there's a process now and I appreciate staff that have made that, but making this guarantee for 10 years that for members of the community with hearing needs, with closed captioning systems, so that it's available every time and not just if they've requested it, I think is a meaningful step forward, especially having heard the Disability Access Plan update last week. So I appreciate that. I fully support that, and I think it's also looking at how our different members and populations within our community are accessing our open business here in public. It's a meaningful step forward. So I thank the team for making that a priority, and I understand that there are laws, but let's not do just a partial solution. Let's make it meaningfully open for our community.
Councilmember Wall.
Speaking to Councilmember Frederick's wondering if we're going to get some kind of guarantee or how long this is going to work. I've dealt with AV for a long time, probably about 2.8 years. I mean, technology just moves so fast, and I know in 3 years, someone's going to come back and say, this part is broken, or it can be better, or this moves so fast. It just moves so fast. So the answer is no, Andy.
Councilmember Fredericks.
To clarify, what I'm saying is, what they say they're gonna do right now is done. I'm not looking for a guarantee 10 years down the road. We don't even know if something better than YouTube's gonna come out, which is, I'm not expecting that at all. I'm just expecting what we're told we're gonna get said time, that's what we get. That's what I'm saying.
We'll do our absolute best. Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, were you going to comment?
So we'll do our absolute best to make sure that happens.
All right. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Wall voting nay. Moving on to item H3, the former F6, which is a bid advertisement, Emergency Operations Center Dispatch Area Improvements. This was pulled by you, Councilmember Wall. Take it away.
Thank you. And surprise, surprise, it's all about costs. I am pleased that I got a good amount of information from city staff through the course of the day. Again, looking at about $300,000, a little under 1,700 square feet, and what it would take to build out. Some of my questions were with the infrastructure already built, and that doesn't necessarily mean electric or plumbing, but just walls, roofs that we all need in our houses. With no land procurement, that $300,000 sounds even more in terms of building out a 1,700, a little less, square foot space. As I looked at the specs for this, good thing we can blow things up because it's very small and hard to read. And certainly there's no specs as to what kind of white ice tile will be used. I'm always, again, on the side of frugality, hoping that as we seek bids, we do what probably the most common people in Rochester would put maybe in their own homes, and look to be middle range in terms of spending. And I don't know that that's not what we're already doing, but just want to always have an eye toward the lesser number that will fill our needs for this dispatch area.
Thank you, Councilmember Wall. Who wants to speak to this from staff? I mean, as far as
Council President, I think
mid-range.
Zach Wood is coming forward and he
Ah,
could
there
share
he is.
information about what we're anticipating in order for this interim stage of it being a active EOC.
Go ahead, Mr. Wood.
Good evening, Council President, members of the council, Mayor. Yes, this project is intended to fit out the original shell space from the construction of Fire Station 2 in the Emergency Operations Center. As mentioned, there's significant infrastructure required to support the EOC operations as well as future dispatch possibilities. So really all these costs are dependent on getting all those utilities into the ground, providing all the mechanical systems. Even though the building was designed, there were no systems installed. The building is designed to support all the power, network, backup power, and heating and cooling needs, but that equipment was never installed. So really this project is to go in, ensure we get everything we need to operate that space and future-proof it as much as we can.
Councilmember Palmer.
Since you're up here, I'm going to get a couple questions. We're talking about the future dispatch, or are we talking about moving them when this is completed?
At this point, I might have to defer to Administrator Zelms on the future dispatch possibilities.
Then, before you answer that question, I have one more for you, and that is, you just said backup energy or backup generator. We have one for the fire station. I mean, it's not sized to do
No, sorry, that it is sized to handle the future dispatch loads.
So it's not the generator.
Both the generator and the building systems. So there's no generator. This is all finishing the interior
Okay.
space.
One other question is, Mr. Parrish, do you remember what we paid for the finish out on 125 Live?
Yeah, it was an exceedance of 300,000. I want to say in the 400s, but I can look that up. But it was slightly bigger space, but similar situation. It's almost the exact same use case, just a little bit bigger space-wise, but more than 300 for sure.
Did we come under budget on that?
I think we came in like on budget.
Wonderful. Thank you.
If I could just also add to that, very different systems needed for a usable court space in 125 Live than what the near-term and potentially long-term uses might be. But to answer your first question, I think it was the first question, we don't have anything carried in our CIP to be doing anything in the near term with dispatch. But what we're saying is you would need to have the same systems in place to be able to have the EOC more permanently be located there. The other space where the EOC spins up and spins down is regularly utilized as also a classroom and training space. And so makes it difficult during the weather season to keep things set up, and the setup and tear down and set up and tear down of the EOC does require a fair amount of staff time. So that was really what we were looking at it for. If there was going to be a future conversation about actually either moving or having that be a backup dispatch space, that is something that we would need to talk to our partners with the county about. There is currently a dispatch review that's underway about dispatch operations for the police. They've been working with the county and other partners, but that would be a ways out if we were going to be doing something like that. I will say that we are planning to replace a significant amount of workspace in the existing dispatch center. So that would also be a question of if that was going to happen sooner, utilization of this space. The question would really be, do we want to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars for the equipment in the current space if there is this secondary conversation? But again, we don't have anything built in to actually activate either moving the dispatch or having it be a backup location, because that's an issue we have right now. We do not have a backup location for dispatch if the emergency was to impact this building.
Mayor Norton.
Thank you. I raised some questions and sent them on earlier today too, because I had missed apparently on my National League of Cities meeting, I had missed the study session where this was discussed. And the response that I got today, I'm frankly surprised that this was a priority, but it's on the CIP, it's been brought forward. And I was also told that there are funding mechanisms that have been agreed to, and maybe Administrator Zelms could share what she shared with me earlier when I asked.
Council President, Mayor Norton, the funding for this, if the bids were to come in within that amount, which I would argue might be a question, but based on how we sometimes receive bids, is public safety one-time funding. So that was what the discussion was in November, and then the subsequent approval of the budget amendment. So again, that's one-time funding with very specific types of uses. So wouldn't be coming from the tax levy this project. If there was something to move forward in the future for some other larger use, as we talked about earlier, there is not a funding source for that, and that is not in the CIP. This isn't in our CIP. It is in your amended budget as public safety one-time funding for up to the dollar amount that's listed in your packet. And so if it exceeded that, that would be a secondary conversation. If it was exceeded it by a small amount, probably would bring it to city council to have that discussion. If it doubled that, I think we would maybe not be accepting bids, because I don't know where you would fund that additional cost from.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, given that information, that all the parties that work together agreed that this money would be utilized that way from that fund, I became more comfortable with this. As I said, I struggle a little bit that this is a priority for our city with all the other things that we deal with, but it was public safety funds that can only be used for public safety projects. And if all the players agreed to this, then I became more comfortable with it.
Further discussion on this item? Is there a motion on this item?
Yeah, I'll move to approve a bid advertisement for the Emergency Operations Center dispatch area improvements with an electronic bid opening on May 28th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Doring, seconded by Councilmember Keen. Councilmember Doring, anything further to add?
Nope.
Councilmember Keen, Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
Can we do a roll call?
We can once we get there. Councilmember Fredericks?
I wouldn't be doing my job if I just sat here and said nothing, I guess, but my concern is if we're trying to plan for future, I feel like we don't have like a firm set plan for this space, like we're planning for future development, so to speak. Well, when that future arrives and it's changed, what do we do? I mean, we just went over how fast technology changes and everything. I just don't know we're being responsible to the taxpayers if we just run into something and kind of develop a space without having like a firm, boom, this is how it's going to work. This is the objective. You know, how many times have we needed a backup space for our current dispatch center and things like this? You know, there's a lot of questions that we're kind of, I don't know. I just want to make sure we're being responsible to our community and to the safety of our community, obviously, as well.
Any further discussion? Councilmember King, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that there are some concerns here, even just looking at it's middle of April and this comes on the agenda. But I kind of went through some things today and said like the idea that this space, the one thing that kind of tipped me over with it is this idea that right now we're using temporary space and bringing these centers up and then taking them back down. That to me seems real inefficient. I was worried we were going to get into this discussion of the dispatch, but I don't think that's part of what we're investing in right now. That's a separate thing and not something we're doing this investment with the hopes that it comes. I did check though that if that longer term plan, when this was built, it was going to be the dispatch center. The work we're doing right now is all supportive of making that happen. But I wouldn't be doing it for those purposes for the same reason that some of my peers talk about, you don't just anticipate it and spend the money. It does help that we had this one-time funding, and this is the phase 2 of the spending, and we did discern this against other projects. That's the other problem with these sort of one-offs, that you don't compare them to other needs. You just do them as a separate thing, and that's why it's so important to do these more in the budget when you've got 10 different CIP projects and they're competing for the money versus this as a one-off. But I did come around to being able to support this based on that idea of being more efficient with the EOC things that are going on right now. And also just getting to the point where we built that building is at 2014 and then just left these places blank. And we have this one-time funding to do it. So that's where I'm at right now.
Mayor Norton.
Well, I appreciate Councilmember Keen's comments, and I don't want to repeat what he said. I do want to just assure members that are newer to the board that we had a several-year process looking at the Riverbend Agreement and working through issues with regard to dispatch, including traveling to other communities and looking at dispatch. And in the end, we did not decide to move forward with the decision right now, but all the players were on the tour, the sheriff's department and the police department and the administrator and the former chair of the council president, myself and others from the county and other organizations have been looking at this. So we have a group that has been discussing, and I think we'll continue to discuss these issues together to make sure that should we move forward, this may or may not be the location that we choose. And so I think to Councilmember Keen's point, this is just as an EOC standalone is a good one-time use of one-time funds, whether we choose to do dispatch there or not. And there are many pros and cons to that we just determined through the 2-year process that we had to get the Riverbend Agreement assigned that we weren't quite ready to move ahead with that for a variety of reasons and so have not. So I think you have to, I guess my suggestion would be you don't have to, but to move ahead with the thinking that this is for a standalone EOC and it would prepare it for the next step, should we choose to use it for that. But if we didn't, it would still serve a purpose that would be beneficial today.
Councilmember Palmer.
Two quick questions. One is, when does this one-time money expire? And when will the dispatch study be done?
Council President, Councilmember Palmer, I would need police to provide me the answer to the dispatch study conversation. I don't think it was an extensive study unless someone who participated knows the answer. I'm looking at Mr. Parrish. I don't believe there's also an end date on the public safety one-time funding. We received it and then we expend it, but the council authorized this as one of the uses in November. After significant discussion between fire, police, emergency management, the city attorney's office, and others about how they felt the best utilization of some of the funds were, and they felt like being able to have the standalone EOC be viable would be very beneficial based on the number of times we activated that during the summer storms. Mr. Parrish, did I look at you long enough?
I think you're correct. I don't think the dispatch study is, it'll be this year. I mean, I think there's scope to get results back at this point in time. And then absolutely no time limit on the public safety one-time money. We've been provided it. There's a statutory framework in which we can spend it. But we don't have a specific date.
Any further discussion on this item? Clerk Kasel, could you call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Keen.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Wall.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Doring.
Aye.
Council President Schubring.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Moving on to item H4, which is a contract with Good Point Technology for pavement management consulting services. Councilmember Palmer.
Yeah, I pulled this item because what we've been doing in the past is using two summer help people. That's where our numbers have come from. That's what we made our plan on. So I don't really see the necessary spending $58,000 to hire a management consulting services. So I won't be approving this project.
Yep. Mr. Newmeyer, are you going to take this one?
Sure. So I'll point out, just like we have in the RCA narrative, that there are benefits to using this technology over interns, mostly just with the integrity of the data. We've seen some inconsistency from year to year when we hire new interns, bring them in and train them to do this pavement condition index rating. With the human portion of that scoring of our streets, we feel like utilizing this technology actually help improve our data and help us make better decisions in the long term. So that's why we'd like to move away from it. There is some discussion about staffing challenges in the narrative as well. But I would lean into just looking at improving technology over time and how much this can contribute to making better decisions to manage our pavement around the city.
Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
So there's inconsistency in your staff, but we can do a training issue for that. And I'm assuming summer staff is a little bit cheaper than using these guys. The second question then is, next year you go out for bid again and you get another company. Are we going to get a different inconsistency and say, well, now we have more poor, or we have less poor roads, or we have better roads? How do you keep that standard?
So I will note that this is a professional services contract, so we're not necessarily going out for bids. We're selecting this consultant based on their experience with their system to begin with and their qualifications. We anticipate that we would have them come back again next year and do the second half of the city, so there should be consistency there. I'll note part of the inconsistency that we note is just the human element of doing the inspections themselves. There's just some subjectivity to how many cracks did I see, how large were they, how much did I pay attention as I was walking down the street, that in theory, this technology eliminates that.
And why didn't you go out for a bid? Why aren't we bidding this?
Because Good Point Technology has been a part of helping us manage our pavement condition index over time. They're familiar with their system. They're qualified for the work, and going to a different consultant would frankly have us rearranging some stuff that we'd prefer not to do. So with other contracts like, similar to other contracts like this, professional services, we're selecting them based on their applicability to the work and their qualifications.
My last question is, how does this compare to having 2 interns versus having this company?
Do you mean cost-wise?
Yes.
2 interns would be a little over half of this cost, but given the better data that we anticipate coming out of it, we think it's a good investment of our street maintenance dollars.
Thank you.
Further, Councilmember Miller, go ahead.
Just a quick question to follow up on that. So you said you expect to come back next year for the second half. How long then after the second half study is complete would you expect to need to do a project like this again?
Sure. So what we'd want to do is get on a rotation of a smaller portion of town beyond that after we got the entire city pulled in under this data. We've talked about potentially doing that a quarter or a third at a time on a rotation. It would have a smaller price tag, but then we would continue with similar contracts or a similar approach down the road to keep that consistency over time.
And so I know some additional information was provided that those intern positions have also been difficult to hire often. Would you anticipate this process now replaces the need for those interns, or would you continue to suggest recruiting interns for other public works projects?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Some of that depends on the candidates we get, the number and the quality of candidates, of course, but we've also discussed internally reallocating those resources, assuming that we can get them hired towards the construction efforts in town. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room how much construction work is coming for Rochester. So we're actually eyeing that as an opportunity to cover more construction work through the busy season.
Okay. So theoretically, at some point, this would likely become an annual $25,000 expense, more or less.
Theoretically.
$1,000.
Yep.
Okay.
And coming out of that funding source, that tax levy that's set aside for maintenance of the streets.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Doring.
I appreciate Councilmember Palmer's questions about finances, going with interns as opposing to this particular consultant agency. I want to talk about time. So how much area of the city would you expect 2 interns to cover to do the kind of evaluative purposes that this organization would be doing?
So typically we had been on that rotation. I think there's some mention of that in the narrative of a goal of like a 3 to 5 year turnaround. So it's probably similar to what we had proposed going forward for how we would maintain this, about a quarter of the city, to keep those numbers reasonably up to date. So it would be comparable.
Yeah, so if you do the math and you understand that we're gonna do a quarter per year, and essentially you're gonna do 2 quarters per year, it's pretty much a wash, is what I'm hearing you say. There's more upfront expense right now, but in 2 years, we would get what we would get for 4 years of data using interns.
That's true. And just anecdotally, Dylan and I were discussing before this item came up, like there may be a gap year or 2 in there. But we see some advantages to getting the whole city captured on the front end, especially since we've gotten behind on some of this data collection just with allocation of resources.
Sure, thank you.
You bet.
Further discussion on this item? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to authorize a contract with Good Point Technology in the amount of $58,000 for pavement management consulting services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keen, seconded by Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Keen, you have the floor.
Yeah, again, I've listened to the discussion. I looked at this earlier and I recall back a couple of years ago where we did a major reassessment of our streets and a grading thing. And it is a bit bothersome how subjective some of this can be and what the grading, how this stuff works, and then how we use the data, how serious it is. So the idea that we're moving towards a more professional way of doing it is probably reasonable. At the same time, we have so many of these little things going on where we're spending a little extra here and doing a little more. And we're going to have a meeting next Monday afternoon here where we talk about what our outlook is for 2026, 2027. And these are the places we spend some of this money. So I think we want to be on guard for these and make sure they're valid to do.
Councilmember Wall.
Mr. Keene talks about doing this professionally. Do we know that the people who would come to do this assessment are adult professionals who have done this for a long time, or will they be hiring summer help and training them?
I guess I don't know how to answer that directly, unless Dylan does. Presumably they would send qualified people to operate the technology, right? And the consistency comes from what the technology can achieve scanning the streets.
Further discussion? Seeing, Councilmember Miller, did you have seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
We have 5-2 with council members Palmer and Fredericks voting nay. Moving on to item H5, which is professional services agreement with MEND Collaborative Historic Downtown District Visioning Plan. Councilmember Palmer, you pulled this item.
Yeah, and I won't be supporting this item. To me, a visioning plan could be better done by our local people, our local staff that we have. And I think $124,940 is a lot of money to pay somebody to come into Rochester to say this is what 4-block area should look like. So that was my questions on why I won't be supporting this.
Ms. Woodward, do you want to address this?
Certainly. Thank you. Councilmember Palmer, council members, we did receive 6 different proposals for this. It's not only a visioning plan, but it really starts to look at a public realm plan and what does that streetscape look like. As we really discussed incentives as we were developing the historic district and coming for approval, we really looked at the regulatory, the public realm, and the financial incentives, and this being a component of that financial incentives of developing this plan. And really part of the reason for this is we heard from the property owners and the business owners that they really wanted to understand what this district looks like going forward and creating that vision, and how does this space differentiate from other spaces in the downtown. So as there was a lot of discussion about that, part of the reason that we also looked for a consultant, and part of that pricing is really to do extensive engagement, and that engagement is being done by the consultant. To really make sure that we're hearing all the different business owners, property owners, people living downtown, and really doing extensive research on that. We also looked for consultants that had experience with historic districts throughout the state, and those were a component of how we selected this consultant. I would say the pricing that we received was anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 in terms of what we received, and we did interviews to look at that and align the scope with the work and what we heard from how we wanted to develop this going forward.
Mayor Norton, go ahead.
Thank you. I hadn't intended to say anything on this, but I'm wondering if you have a outline of the area that they will be looking at, or if there's flexibility in what they could look at and how far.
Thank you, Mayor. Generally, they're looking at the historic district, but I would say those boundaries are a little bit flexible in terms of we're not just going to have that hard line. How does that district interact with some of those other spaces? So part of where we're also looking at is there a little bit of a circle around that area so that we're kind of seeing how this space potentially interacts with other spaces in the downtown, knowing that you don't want to just look at one side of the road that might be in the district and not consider what's going to happen on the other side. So those are those conversations we have with the consultant.
I appreciate that, and I have my concerns with what's happening with the bell and the clock tower over at the corner where we have disrupted the planting of that historic landmark due to some decisions about Rochester, what the city wants to do with the streetscape, and I've been very frustrated with what doesn't feel like a very well thought out historic document or historic icon, and the streetscape, which is literally a half a block away, that's the historic district. And so I'm wondering, as your consultant comes in, if they could work with the team that is currently working, Gamble and Associates and others, that is currently working on designing that, to see if we can't make certain that we are coordinated in our planning and that we have a streetscape that makes sense. And I'm also just going to irritate everyone by saying I'm still horribly frustrated that we took down the gate or the fence across Broadway that fit beautifully with our historic district that was cut down. And we are continuing to have issues with folks crossing the streets. And so if the person could also look at creative ways to stop traffic, pedestrian traffic, illegally crossing in the middle of those streets as part of that study, it would be great to see that included so that we are maintaining the historic feel of Broadway in that area and carry it on down to the fire station. So if you're moving ahead with this, I would ask that you consider those issues as well.
Other discussion? I'll just say, I mean, I look and I agree with the focus and the objective. I think the council over a year ago made the decision to designate historic district. We do have the grant program that is working. I think part of how I would view the work between the businesses and the newly designated historic district is that public space, there needs to be a unified look to how that historic district is presented. And so I very much agree with the intent and the scope of the project. I guess my question would be the 124,000, where is that coming from? Is that a city and DMC funded project?
Thank you, Council President. The funding is from operating funds within community development. So it will be funded through our professional services funds.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, I'm looking at past prior legislative actions, and I don't see where this came up as any scoping to the council. It seems to me, and not that the council needs to dig into all the work that the city does, but because this historic district is really at the heart of downtown, it's very important to vitality downtown that we didn't get a study session on it, or maybe there was one at the end of last year when I wasn't on the council.
Thank you for the question. There is an item missing on the prior legislative. The scope of work for this was included last year. It was in June of 2024 when all of the financial incentives were approved by the city council at the time. I noticed that was missing this afternoon when I was looking at it, and the scope of work for this public realm plan was included in that.
Okay, thank you. So the previous council has seen this. Thank you. Other discussion on this item? Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, can you just clarify that again when you said, because when I look in this request for council action in the financial or fiscal and resource impacts, it says the fee is proposed to be this, but did you say it's out of community development fee structure, or is it out of?
It would be out of community development operating funds, not out of any type of permit fees or any of that. It would be out of our operating dollars that are levied.
Okay, so it is out of the levy, but was it a budgeted item, or is this something we're saying now that we're gonna spend $124,000 that we didn't have budgeted?
I think, we had funding within our operating budget to
Okay.
make this work, and so we were able to do that as opposed to coming back. This was an item that council really, I think, pushed for in terms of incentives, so we worked within our budgets to make this a priority for this year. And we were able to carry over some funding from 2024 to 2025 that we had left over to be able to accommodate this work.
Okay. You've heard some of the concerns here as far as like, could we do this locally? But also like the scoping. These kinds of things are really difficult on me because when you talk about that idea of streetscape, that I really struggle to get, a mental model of what we're paying for. Can you talk about like, we could have done this or what the other options are? Because it says there's no other options, but clearly you guys worked through and said, we want to do it this way. With scoping and bringing in some sort of expertise, somebody who's done something like this before. Could you kind of give me a better feel for like what we want to have at the end of this, what we have in front of us, what we've purchased?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. I think what we're looking to get out of this plan is a couple of different things. One is like, what does the historic vision in terms of how are we developing this downtown area and how does that guide future projects? In addition, it's really getting engagement in terms of as we're building out streetscape, what does that look like in this historic district and what are those different components? And the consultant would really provide options in terms of what is that going to look like throughout some of the engagement. But also it's really hearing from the property owners, the residents and the business owners in that area of like, what's really going to be helpful for them as they are part of the district and really what does this space look like? And really making sure we kind of engage them in that process and provide options. So at the end, there'll be a kind of a plan of here's future potential projects that would all be incorporated in potential future CIPs. But there would need to be all of these steps along the way to identify those projects and figure out identify potential costs associated with them and what are those different options. And so being able to kind of put that, in some ways, a guide together of how we really look at some of these projects moving forward.
Okay. Okay. Actually, that's helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Miller.
Just to follow up on that, might it be analogous, you've said public realm, other public realms where we've done master plans are public parks. Might this be analogous to a project like the Silver Lake Master Plan, the Soldiers Field Master Plan, pulling together stakeholders to develop a plan for a public space?
Yes, it's kind of the intent of this kind of plan is to really provide that guiding document and identify those priorities and what does that look like going forward.
Thank you. And following up on the mayor's question about just transportation, travel patterns, those kind of things, this project does include a look at access to the downtown through this district by multi-modes. Is that correct? Looking at transportation planning, not as the primary focus of the project, but as a component?
I think it would be a component, and I would say the other part would be consultants looking at all of the other plans and the work that's already been done within the downtown and taking that into consideration as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
If we have a consultant down at the riverfront area who has a plan, why wouldn't we just extend that contract and make that part of that so that it flows? Because right now you're going to go down 3rd Street, you're going to cross Broadway, and then you're going to have another consultant with their ideas across the street. And so that doesn't make much sense to me. And what I don't want to have come back is, well, we're going to have wayfinding and then we're going to have street signs with a topper on it. And we talked to a bunch of people and I don't know how you're going to get everybody in this district to agree to what you really want to do. So why wouldn't you use the same consultant when you're using down the riverfront area?
Councilmember Palmer, I think part of it is any consultant that's going to come in is going to look at the other existing plans that are around there. I mean, as part of our evaluation process, we did an RFP and did receive different proposals and really had to evaluate what aligned with the scope of work and what's going to make sense for what is needed in the downtown historic district. I do think the consultant is going to be looking at that riverfront plan. It's also something as city teammates that we're going to inform of what is happening in these other spaces. There is other work being done downtown that also needs to be taken into consideration of how all these align and making sure that we're looking at them all together as well.
And I think you mentioned during our conversation that we had a low bid of $100,000. Why didn't we take the low bid?
It is considered professional services. We also evaluate different criteria in terms of their proposal and how they responded to it and their experience. And I would say the proposal we really looked at met some of the other things that we were looking for in terms of how they responded to our scope of work and and being able to have the skill in the team to be able to accomplish that.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Of the business owners in that district, what would you say the percentage of people in that are interested in this particular thing?
I think this has always been an interest for businesses within the historic district, and I think it's partly what we heard as
the historic district was getting approved, there was a sense of like, what does this look like and how do we create this space and define this area so that it becomes almost the district as an economic development tool. So how can it really assist them in terms of how do we make improvements going forward to differentiate this space?
What was the percentage of the people that are?
I mean, we spoke to a couple of them for multiple. There's also a contingent of property owners that weren't for the historic district, but also recognize that there's a benefit to being able to participate in how this space gets used going forward. So I will also say that as part of the engagement, the consultants are planning to go door to door and talk to every property owner. And we're going to reach out to all the residents and all the businesses when that has a priority of we have for this planning effort.
Council President Schubring, if I might
ahead,
just
Ms.
build off
Steinhauser.
of what Community Development Director Woodward indicated. In addition, we worked very closely with Destination Medical Center on going door to door, and Jamie Rothy and members of Irene's team, Ms. Woodward's team, met with every single property owner, and I don't recall the percentage of businesses, but every single property owner in the historic district had at least one one-on-one session to get feedback of what were some of the things that you'd like to see with the historic district. And so these are what is represented in this proposal reflects that feedback, along with some of the other things that were put in place, like the DMC's $5 million funding for historic preservation renovation. So there was a lot of one-on-one conversations with property owners and businesses throughout this process. That this recommendation really reflects that feedback.
Councilmember Miller.
Just a quick question on schedule. It shows in the exhibit that this would be wrapped up in August, should it get approved. Is that timely to interact with DMC's 5-year development plan update, the forward-looking portion of that?
Thank you for the question. I think anything that we're looking at, there will also be considerations and conversations with the firm that is selected to look at the look forward for the DMC, recognizing this is a component of the DMC. So we will have coordination with folks at the DMC that are also participating in this process. So there'll be a lot of back and forth so that whatever is developed here is taken into consideration as that look forward. And what does that look like?
Further discussion? Is there a motion on this item?
Sure. I'll make a motion authorizing execution of a professional services agreement with Men Collective to engage with stakeholders and develop a vision plan for the downtown commercial historic district in an amount not to exceed $124,940.
Moved by Councilmember Miller. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Keen. Councilmember Miller, go ahead.
I think that looking back at the past actions this council has taken in coordination with stakeholders in the downtown district, I see this as an important planning step to make sure that we realize the full vision of what's possible in that district. I share some of my colleagues' concerns. I've been trying to think about kind of this mental model, and we've done it successfully in other public spaces, typically parks. Consultants are hired. This consultant has worked on the Silver Lake Park Master Plan. I see a real possibility for engaging all of the stakeholders. And I've often experienced the question of who is guiding the vision for downtown? Who is the primary stakeholder? And there's not one. So I think that this is a worthwhile process to get there, particularly for this district. So that when we look forward through Unbound construction on the other side of that, we get to a place of a new, vibrant downtown anchored by historic district. So I plan to support this, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities to draw out better engagement in what this becomes.
Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, again, these ones are difficult for me because I really, that whole idea of visioning and that idea of like streetscape, very difficult for me. But I did look through the packet, and a couple of things to comment on. One is they have local people that were, raised in Rochester. They've had projects like Silver Lake. They've done local work in the Twin Cities. So I think that idea of having that experience with some of this is good. But again, these are the kind of things that when we make that historic district, what did we mean by doing that? What's going to happen with it? And I think the fact that we're trying to get our arms around it a little more is probably useful, or I hope it would be, and in these sort of cases, I try to make sure we have the right staff in place and trust their recommendations, and based on that, I'll support this.
Thank you. I also will be supporting this. I look at really what we did a year ago as a council to designate this historic district downtown. It really was a statement that we were saying, this is important to us. This is important about our history. This is important for our future. And I look at this investment in what looks to be, to me, very professional with, as Councilmember Keen said, some local understanding and a deep understanding of historic districts. I think it's a good match. I also look and say, we have made a commitment with DMC for the economic vitality of this district with $5 million for the owners of these properties, and they're picking those up. I think we've had 8 of them now come before us. And so there is an investment by the property owners to commit to this historic district. So I see this as our first step as the city to say, we're going to wrap around our business owners that have taken these properties and really look to a vision for the streetscape and increasing that vitality and also increasing the economic vitality of their storefronts. So if there is a strong streetscape around those properties, they're going to be picked up much more quickly and at a good economic value. So with that, I will be supporting this as well. Councilmember Fredericks.
A strong historic district in a community is a large asset. I've traveled around the nation, seen several historic districts done well. A lot of them very much older than ours will be, with a lot, probably several more buildings of, probably a little bit more of a presence with the buildings, I'll say, than like maybe we have here in Rochester. I just want to be real sensitive to the businesses in that area that their feet ain't held to the fire on certain things. Maybe they're not on board with and such. Streetscapes, signage, sidewalks, all these things. Obviously, we have to have a firm plan with that in an historic district for it to tie together and flow properly. I just want to be sensitive to the business owners in that community and make sure that they're not being forced to do things maybe they're not on board with. That's a touchy subject for me. So that's where I come from on it.
Other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Nay. 6 in favor with Councilmember Palmer voting nay. Moving on to our ordinance first readings. Go ahead, Mr. Spindler Craig.
Thank you, Mr. President. One first reading, item J1, an ordinance annexing to the city of Rochester approximately 28.84 acres of land located east of 60th Avenue Northwest and approximately 500 feet south of King Arthur Road Northwest, identified by PIN number 073833. Moving on to the second reading, item K1, an ordinance designating the Pill Hill Historic District a historic landmark district and amending the official zoning map as referenced in 60.200.020A of the Unified Development Code of the City of Rochester.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keen, seconded by Councilmember Wall. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Any other business tonight? Is there a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councilmember Fredericks,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Keen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned.
Great.
Recording stopped.